Hey guys, sorry for not making a video in a while. I'm just gaining my footing and everything back. Um, from a subscriber's perspective, I lost all of you and I have to get all of you back over here. Um, and I want to describe, my Saber journey, for you guys. Um, now, I do have lightsabers from the Saber community, and they were not free sabers, mind you. No, they were not. They feel free because they are a charity build from the community. Well, one's a charity, and the other one say, "Hey, we'll welcome you. You're welcome here anytime." As a gift to say, "I'm welcome in the Saber community anytime." And as well as the second saber I have, which I now gave names to my sabers. My custom Cannon Jarus looking one is named the Blind Padawan, reminiscent of Kanan's saber, but he was a Jedi Knight, so he called his the Blind Knight because duh. And somebody that's legally blind and also his Padawan. Padawans are usually inspired by their masters, right? And this is probably in that case um, with basically this saber right here. Um, Now, this is what I've named because of the obvious, the Blind Padawan. Um, And if you guys are visually impaired watching, just know that the Blind Padawan is the 18-inch one, which is in my hands. And my blindflex, which I can't tell the measurements, the length of measurements, it might be one or two below the 18-inch Blind Padawan. But this I custom designed, um, you know, because, every Jedi is different. Every Padawan, every initiate is different. And my brain was like, if I was, on Coruscant and had this disability, what would, I construct to fit my disability? The Jedi wouldn't see me as disabled, of course, but I, of course, would, I would feel a lot like Kanan with, I can't see, like, yeah, and, yeah, and Kanan felt that exact same way. He felt Carabest, I can't see, um, somebody help, and, he couldn't even walk. And I have that same struggle, I can barely walk, in the outside world without my cane or a sighted guide. Even with glasses, for me, glasses don't mean nothing. Because outside, I default to 2300, because it's so bright. That high contrast is next to near impossible. You can't stabilize the sun. Tatooine, if I were on Tatooine, I'd be 2400, because of the double suns, because of the twin suns, I'd be more impaired. Yeah, if I was a Tatooine. And this saber is what's known as a NeoPixel accessible saber. And, you know, the saber community uses NeoPixel adapter. I just say NeoPixel accessible. And I have to tell you, this journey with this saber in particular, the Blind Padawan that I'm still holding right now, is a hard, scary journey. You might as well call it one of my as part of my Jedi trials. Add that to the trial checklist. Complicated journey to make saber. Check. Yeah. Add that in the Jedi archives. But this saber, I'll explain the journey that I went through to get this saber. Now, basically, 2 years ago, now going on 2 years, because we're 2021. This was back in 2019. Um, in 2019, my dad and I were watching Star Wars: A New Hope. I couldn't see it too well, of course, but my father would describe, where Luke was, where what Obi-Wan was doing, what Darth Vader was doing, from the stormtroopers, etc. Um, yeah, and I also rewatched with audio description once I got Disney Plus, and after figuring out that feature, I turned it on and was like, "Whoa, that'll help me a whole lot." And I discovered a community that I now know as the Saber community or lightsaber community, I think it's called, but some just say Saber community. Take off the light and put in, just the word saber, and you get Saber community. Um, I kind of refer to it as more of a Jedi community because even though it's a balanced world of Jedi and Sith alike, kind-hearted Sith, mind you, um, and these Sith Lords, they're not wanting to take over the world. Even though they're with the dark side of the Force, they still get, the light side is healthy, but be careful because it can possibly do this. Yeah. And, yeah. And basically, I discovered through the community a Facebook group known as The Vault, um, which I now know is from Vader's Vault. Sweet, sweet owners, by the way. Um, I pray you guys are feeling better. I heard the Vader's Vault owners were sick. I pray you're feeling better now. But anyway, because I heard that the owners of Vader's Vault have recovered from being sickly, and stuff like that. So that's kind of nice that they were able to recover. Because being sick nowadays, it's life. It's a constant duel between, immune systems. I just put it at that. Especially if you have my conditions. Every illness um, is an internal duel. Um, Only difference is I have now gotten a flu shot to, you know, we got my flu shot to give me, that little bit of internal armor to basically protect my body from severe illness. And I one day, I'm posting in the vault, just nonchalant, just getting to know everybody and everything. As well as, hey, what's the same community? What's it need? And they would describe what the same community is, and I was like, whoa, can I join? And they're like, no, you're already in. Um, and I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm visually impaired. Um, and that one day, November 2019, I think it was, I decided to beg the question, hey, I'm visually impaired. Is there a way I can get a saber, and how I would go about that from an accessibility standpoint? Like I was asking not for free sabers, obviously, because I know nothing's free, but I was asking if anybody was doing a raffle or giveaway, and I get hearts, likes, and now the new care feature, cares. And then I get like, well, we recommend you save up. We recommend you save up. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll wait on it. And then I warn that I'm visually impaired. My acuity is this and this. And I dropped the bomb that legally blind padawan over here, and I get BS comments, ranging from, oh, go to Saberforge and make something out of scrap metal or whatever the hell it was. And then it got worse, with, oh, you gotta work for it. You gotta work for it. When I just told you all I'm disabled. And, getting a job as a disabled person is never easy. That's why they have training at services for the deaf, services for the paralyzed, services for the blind. That's why they have all those services organizations to help and train the disabled person, whether they be deaf, blind, or in a wheelchair, on how to run a business, start a business, or apply for a job, or live an everyday life, and how to cope with your disability independently as a legal adult. The normal age to start this is around like after graduation, like 19 to 20, because, but, I never got around to it because, I was just too scared of, college for reasons I won't get into. But then the next thing I know, as I'm not posting, but as I'm looking through the comments under magnification, I'm like, do you guys even care? And suddenly somebody from the Rebel Armory, which I now know is the Rebel Armory, sticks up and says, hey, she said she is visually impaired. Didn't she? She's still getting a saber. She's not paying us anything. And I was like, tearing up. And suddenly I got a ping on Messenger on Facebook. And it was, that person. And I have to commend, Scarecrow's Workshop, because they really guided me throughout this whole build, from the start of the situation to the saber getting, to my door. And because, without them, I might have probably been good as, depressed, if not maybe dead. Because, words can kill you, believe it or not. Even words can strike somebody down. That's why there's so much cyberbullying campaigns nowadays in schools. Yeah. And even in my school, we had a little assembly that talked about think before you post or think before you comment, stuff like that. And even there's lots of cyber dangers on the internet that you have to be careful with, from trolls to predators to just all around meanies. And then as my saber gets underway, or is about get underway, I have, a calm talking with Scarecrow, and he pulled an Obi-Wan Kenobi with, don't strike yourself down the Jedi way. And because, I would be literally crying, and, like, they don't get it. I told them a bazillion of times, and yeah, and after being cheered up, we discussed my build, and discussed also my disability and what accessibility measures have to be taken on my particular hilt. And I said, is there a way to make a hilt accessible? And Scarecrow said, to a degree, yes. But there won't be no hilt reader. Which is unfortunate. But at least I get tactile feedback, vibrative or force feedback, as Space Windu puts it. And every time I ignite, it's like, little, like what I get on my phone. And throughout the whole build, I was nervous, and people were like starting to accuse me of asking for free sabers and all of that. And then the next thing, I know, a month or two later, the saber hilt is in, in physical form. My design is in physical form. I even showed Scarecrow my design. I basically did that design with Saberforge's little saber, whatchamacallit. But it's where you can design your own custom saber and say, hey, here's what it is. This is what I want it to look like. At least to as much as it can possibly be. Because, a design is different compared to putting it in real life. And the coolest part is when I got word that, hey, you're getting a NeoPixel blade and a Golden Harvest soundboard, Golden Harvest V3, and I was like, Goldie Harv, what? And I had to learn all of this. I had to learn what they meant by Golden Harvest and V and 3 and V this and V that, and I basically had to learn and get trained on what they all meant by blah blah blah, insert name of soundboard, V this, V that, and so on and so forth. And I'm like, whoa. And then they started to talk about NeoPixel, and I was like, Neo what? And they were talking Streamblades, and I was like, oh, I know what a Streamblade is, but never knew that was the real name. And then they described what NeoPixel is, the translation, and and how it functions, and you can kind of spar a tiny bit, but not a whole lot. And that got me scared. And what was really, what got me scared was I was going to be dealing with a PCB for the first time as a visually impaired person. And I would see all these people dealing with PCBs and they're sighted. I even tried to look up, NeoPixel for the blind. Nothing showed. Except for one video from MegTube's Sabers. and he is an awesome dude. And although allied with the dark side, just like Whistler, but he made my NeoPixel, my 26-inch NeoPixel, trans white blade. I think it's trans white or it's regular white. I'm still getting used to these terms. And because, when you can't see what things look like too well, you have to either magnify them or ask for a description. And that's what I did. And ask, hey, what's the saber sound like? What's the sound font? What's this? What's that? And they basically told me the whole 9 yards. And they told me how a PCB works. Don't do this, do it like this, because blah, blah, blah. And Megtooth showed me how the NeoPixel blade works in a video. It was pretty helpful. I could see the different contrast of the blade. Now I couldn't tell what hilt it was in very well, too much very well, other than maybe a faint shape and color, but I didn't know what hilt that was. I was mostly focused on my blade. He would go through the sound fonts, and I would hear sound font after sound font, and I would, hear names being described, like Obi-Wan, Luke Skywalker, and I heard that trademark Return of the Jedi, and I was like, oh, I know who that is. And I, told him thank you. And during this time, I was joining with the Rebel Armory forum, which I will not get into, otherwise this video would be a millennia long. But NeoPixel did scare me. I did at first was scared of NeoPixel, but over time, I started to, adjust and, don't be afraid. You're gonna be okay. You're not gonna, get hurt. You're not gonna go the wrong way. There's only one way. And I was like, oh, okay. And when I got it in my hands, at first, I couldn't really lift the hilt too well, even minus the blade. I had to really work up arm strength to get, to where I am now with being able to hold this. Because I don't really use my, right arm too much, even though I should. Pack and Tag warns to don't let the non-dominant hand become useless. And that's great advice. As well as people from the Saber community were warning, hey, you gotta use that. You gotta use that weaker arm. It's the only way it's gonna get stronger. And I get these painful exercises and they still kind of hurt, even though, I've been, doing them, but it's, still, you know, cramp, inducing. You might be thinking, you're a girl, you should be used to the nature of cramps. And yeah, true, I'm a woman and we get our monthly cycle and it causes us to cramp. But when you exercise, an exercising cramp is far different. It's caused by putting your arm or whatever part of your body in a weird position and doing basically rotating it like crazy up and down, and flexing like crazy. Like my dad even flexes his waist by twisting his waist when he goes to his job. And the tricky part was instead of the NeoPixel blade, because inside of the NeoPixel blade, not the blade, but the emitter area, you have teeny tiny, impossible to see pogo pins. And for me, I can't see those. Even if I dare pull a Luke and look inside the emitter, risking sabering my eyeball out, it'll be hard to see. Or I won't be able to see them pretty much at all. So I was basically guided to feel and trail with the blade till I feel a bump. And that will tell me that the blade is joined with the connecting pins. And then I could fasten it down with the retention screw and bzzz, and yeah. There's also accessibility features, but it depends on your soundboard. Golden Harvest, it has audio description. CFX has some audio description in the menu, which is nice, whereas Golden Harvest doesn't. Golden Harvest will tell you your power cell life, like how much power you got left or remaining. It's a tricky gesture, but eventually, you get the hang of it. And whereas CFX, you have no way unless you use it 1,000 times and suddenly one day you go to Ignite, sell energy, create a queue, and you get that. And I have to say, the most scary out of all the sabers is the NeoPixel one, because you're dealing with connection, you're dealing with NeoPixel pins, you have to make sure it's on the money or else it won't ignite properly. And the story on this blindflex is a way easier story. This story was out of nowhere. I was basically in the Saber community, lazying around, hanging out, and suddenly I get messages of, "Hey, we want to give you away a saber. Do you want one?" And I'm like, sure. What do you have?" And I got like nervous, like, like, and because I'm also with the Saber Legion, which, sorry for being so inactive to the SL, you know, I'm not able to go to anything or do anything event-wise because of this whole pandemic. But I pray, once we all get vaccinated, we'll be able to probably hang out again. And the story between this saber, he talked to me about CFX, and apparently I learned that yes, CFX is a trickier board, and it's a tricky to navigate board. And Megtooth Sith isn't lying when he says, "Watch out, CFX is going to be a little trickier," and he's not further from the truth, because it took me weeks, if not almost going on a month, or days, like days of videos, as well as asking, which button does what, yeah, because this time I had two switches rather than one. My blind padawan, I'm used to it because it has one switch that I can just, buzz and do everything all one switch. Whereas this is like which one is ignition, which one is blaster block. And I had to do a stream to ask for help, as well as, asking the giveawayer, hey, how do I navigate this hill? And warning, it also got Sabersmith's ranging from Scarecrow's Workshop and Griff's Custom Sabers LLC to suddenly Wild Space Outpost. And I want to take the time to thank both Scarecrow and Griff and Wild Space for helping to make my sabers blind accessible. It really helps me navigate, my hills a lot easier. Like this saber in particular, it makes me think, what if Luke Skywalker was visually impaired and did this? Because, this is like as if, a Jedi or Kanan or somebody knew this was going to go to a blind Padawan and they customized it to fit that Padawan's vision acuity struggles. Like for example, Kanan don't know his exact acuity, but some have been saying he's totally blind. But how do you explain him being able to see shapes whenever he's in light? That's not total blindness. That's more like, like partial blindness or legally blind. Because if Kanan was totally blind, he wouldn't have been able to see Ezra's shape and the light emanating from the holocron. And, like his retina might have been somewhat salvaged to a point to where it gave him probably severe central vision loss, but peripheral vision might be still okay. Because the way he got hit, they don't show it, but it looks like Kanan went up with his blade and Darth Maul went like to the side and up a tiny bit, which probably, damaged probably the central vision, but probably not the peripheral. Because, it depends on how bad the strike is. And I just love my sabers to this day, both equally, the blindflex and the blind padawan. Now, if you had to say what soundboard is the most harder to learn, I would have to say Crystal Focus 10, because even though it feels like a hilt reader with its sound font selection menu open, like descriptions and all that stuff, it doesn't tell you your power level. It doesn't, give audio guidance, with the power level or, what blade color you want. It just says blade color profile and you just get a clicking feedback, which is very helpful, but for somebody that's totally blind, they may need to hear every description, because Whistler is getting CFX as well, and I bet he would appreciate if his hilt was more blind accessible from an audio standpoint, probably. I'm not, him, so I don't know, but I bet he would probably want that. For somebody like me, you could probably keep the way it is, but just tell me where I am in the menu. Like for example, when I hit the auxiliary button, I get sound font selection menu, and it tells me what font I'm currently on, and I can use the ignition to go backwards and the auxiliary to go forwards. And Gordon Harvest, you have gestures to cycle through the fonts, whereas CFX, you're just pressing whatever buttons. And now I have to say I'm getting better skilled a little bit in CFX. Although whatever mystery functions are on there, I don't probably know how to get to those. You know. But the coolest part is, you know, the fact that I got, my wish come true. Being a visually impaired Star Wars fan, and especially one of my siblings idolizing the legally blind Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus himself. I bet Kanan would be very happy and very proud, and you know, smiling at the description of my saber. And yeah, and I have been practicing off and on, with them. I just have to get, those midichlorian cells and blood flow moving again, because we're all cooped up in the house. There's very little exercises, I can do, without risking bashing the walls, you know. Um, Even though granted you could say, hey, go outside, just, wear a mask. But who wants to keep doing that? I'm all for mask wearing, but not all day long. Because, I can only wear it, for minuscule amounts. Luckily, there's sections where you can take a mask break, and that's pretty helpful. And when it comes to my Saber emitters, like I said, the blind padawan is NeoPixel, whereas the blindflex is triqui, and triqui basically means that it's in-hilt LEDs, similar to a flashlight, but more powerful. That's more for like if you want to spar. And I'm glad I got two sabers with different functions, like one for spar, another for just lazing around and practicing arm strength with. The tricky part is, being able to spar effectively, because I've watched Kanan spar, and he was slow, sluggish, but he managed to defeat his opponents. He would just do minor slow, and grab him by the arm and throw them over the ledge or whatever gap in the floor. Yeah. That's how his fighting style is now because of his disability. And speaking of which, there's no new word on Doom yet. I am excited for the fan film. Because for the first time, it's gonna be, a legally blind Jedi in live action. I'm just so heart-pounding excited. I'm not sure how much longer I can wait. I'm just like, excited. I really want to see this. Um, because it'll be interesting to see Kanan, during those recovery days. Because that's what the film, to avoid spoilers, the film is just going to basically explore Kanan while he's recovering from his saber injury. And I'll just leave it at that. Um, but the trailer is pretty promising. I just hope that, all goes well in production, considering the virus right now, and that everybody that's working on the film stays safe and stay healthy. And yeah,